you're trying to build like a healthy, fit lifestyle, there's some principles that you want to lean on that are going to carry you forever. Your goal should be, I'm going to learn a bunch of different strategies that I can employ at different times of my journey, depending on what I'm facing, what obstacles I'm facing, what I'm trying to do. You know what I mean? When I'm working with a personal training client who's trying to change up their eating habits, one strategy that we might employ, that a lot of times we employ, is tracking what you eat in MyFitnessPal, so that you can try to change your eating habits to stay within a certain, calorie goal or a certain protein goal. But that's not something you have to do all the time. In fact, I don't really think that you should always track all the time. There are people who do it, but I think that they're more rare. What you want to do, use tracking to kind of get the sense of how much you need to eat in order to reach your goals. And you want to eventually reach the point where you're able to intuitively eat the way that you need to eat in order to reach your goals. So it's not something that you should have to do all the time, but specifically when you're trying to make a change. So that's more like the super zoomed in perspective of changing your eating habits would be tracking. Tracking has multiple levels too. It's just like calories, or you can track calories and macronutrients, which is, proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, which are the three main sources of your calories. Where are your calories coming from? How many grams of one versus the other you're going to eat every day? You can get really, really detailed in the tracking. But again, that's not something that you can do all the time. Most people can't do that all the time. And that's where I think it's good to also have your zoomed out kind of basic principles that you follow when you're not tracking. These basic principles are going to be, they're going to cover when you are tracking and help you to make good choices that fit your tracking goals, but you'll be able to fall back on these principles, even when you are, in a more relaxed diet phase. And so I try with my clients to teach them how to use these different strategies at different levels. So if you want to zoom out all the way and talk about just generally building a healthy diet, generally speaking, I encourage everybody to follow what I call the healthy plate model. It's a little modified variation of the My Plate model. The My Plate model was issued by the USDA in 2015 alongside the dietary recommendations for Americans in 2015. And this was to replace the food guide pyramid, which is do not follow the food guide pyramid. It's garbage, and I can't believe that we were raised with that. If you are like me and you were raised in the 90s. Food guide pyramid, go away. No, we don't like it. This is much better. So when you sit down to eat or sit down to plan out your meals, you want to generally follow a model that's kind of like this. There's different variations of it, yes, of course, but this is kind of like the baseline standard plate. On half of your plate, you want to fill that up with vegetables, especially if you're in a fat loss phase. Leafy greens, broccoli, red and orange vegetables like bell pepper and tomatoes and squash, okay? And then you want to limit the amount of grains that you're eating. And grains and grain-based foods are things like rice, like bread, wheat-based stuff, pasta. You want to restrict that to about a quarter of your plate. And then you want to make sure that you fill up at least a quarter of your plate with a good lean source of protein. Okay. There's variations of this. If you're on a really big cut, or you kind of overate over the weekend and you want to balance it out and have less calories, then just fill up half the plate with vegetables and the other half with protein. If you are trying to bulk, you might want to make it more like a third, but this is kind of like the standard baseline. And if you keep this in mind when you are stepping back and you're in a more relaxed diet phase where you're not tracking everything, if you follow this model, it can help you to stay within your recommended calorie range, and it will help you to reach, generally speaking, your macronutrient goals. Make sure to like this video and subscribe for more trainer tips and exercise tutorials.